Yes, sister. Mic for the sister, please.
So would this theory, or would this apply to psychological things? Like, I was talking to one of my teachers about, like, you know, how do you do psychology because of the, you know, the scientific method usually refers to physical things, right?
Yes.
And he was saying that basically what they usually do is, like, they use experiments and, you know, different things that happen to people, and they document it and stuff. So it's kind of, like, it's weird how they accept, like, lots of psychological things when you can't really prove it that well physically, but they won't accept something like God's existence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can't prove physically. Like, like so many mathematical truths you can't prove physically. So many philosophical principles you can't prove physically. They're all required for you to have any physical stuff going on anyway in the first place.
Yeah.
And it would be a very shallow academic to say that I don't believe in God because I can't prove him physically. This is a very shallow academic, because you weren't here this morning, were you?
I was.
Oh, you was? Okay, so
Yeah.
just to remind you of the first principle stuff, even with spheres of knowledge that require empirical physical proof, there's a bunch of first principle philosophical assumptions that they cannot prove physically that they need in order to progress in that sphere of knowledge. So for them to deny that now is self-defeating. It's like denying their own sphere of knowledge in the first place.
Yeah, like that.
And this is the problem with some Western academia. I know this because I'm in the path of pursuing a PhD, and what you realize is people are very narrow in their learning. You could be a great cognitive scientist, right? But you could be ignorant of so many other fundamental sources of knowledge that actually help you with... Actually, cognitive science is the wrong one. Cognitive science is quite multidisciplinary. Maybe that's a bad example. Take, for example, I don't know, history. Yeah. Like, history relies a lot on philosophy. They don't realize it. There's a philosophy of history. If you're not exploring that, then you won't really be a good historian, right? Because there are some philosophical assumptions that, you know, what constitutes good history, right? So there's so many different things that have those first principles that you can't necessarily prove physically that you require in order for that sphere of knowledge to progress. So, yeah, I mean, most people at university, especially academics, they would not necessarily deny that you could conceptually argue about things without any physical proof, you know? Because if you wanted physical proof for everything, then you're in big trouble. A lot of the things that we believe to be true are based on the say-so of others anyways. This is called the epistemology of testimony. I mean, here's a test. I mean, we're going to go through this tomorrow, but here's an argument. Right. Who believes the world is round? Put your hand up. Everybody. All right. Prove to me the world is round physically. Go on. No, that's not proof, because you haven't done that. So that's not proof. I want proof. I want physical proof. No conceptual, no hypotheticals, no if, buts, wants, needs, blah, blah, blah. Tell me.
You can take a laser beam imaging.
Have you done it?
I've seen it being done on YouTube.
You've seen a video doing it?
Yes.
So what kind of source of knowledge is a video? Is it empirical or testimonial?
Testimonial.
Thank you very much. Where's your physical proof that the world is round? Yallah! Tell me why the world is round, boy!
So actually I cannot answer you because I spent 3 months looking for an image of an actual physical world and I couldn't find it. Actual, you mean not something that was computer generated, so CGI.
Well, there you go.
There are many proofs. There are many proofs.
By the way, I'm not denying the world is round. I'm not a flat earther, yeah? And I'm not denying that you can't have proofs. But I'm saying you don't have a physical proof, an empirical dimension to your proof that shows the universe is round. Which shows to the sister in question, that not all proofs are based on empirical data. There's other sources of knowledge, like testimonial or conceptual, whatever the case may be. So my point is that this exercise is to show that you don't have physical proof for something you believe to be true and that you consider something to be true, like the world being round.
The astronauts, they went up and with their own eyes.
Yeah, but are you an astronaut? Have you done it?
We have to believe
exactly.
each other, right?
So you have to believe the say-so of others. So that proof is not physical for you, it's fundamentally testimonial. Yes?
On what basis you would say the seal of the world is round? What is the basis of that?
Well, the basis that normal people say that the world is round is,
Is it mathematical?
well, it's mathematical, it's scientific, it's relying on other people's testimony and what they've said and what they've seen, and other scientific evidences. But that's not the point. The point is, for most of us, we don't have physical proof of that assertion.
We haven't done it ourselves.
Yeah. And therefore you have to rely on testimony.
Yeah.
I tell you a story. Sometimes I used to go to people's houses and these people left Islam, so they're apostates, right? And I was always the kind of guy that would be quite amicable and trying to connect with people and, just engage. Because a lot of apostates are apostates because of bad parenting or really dark upbringings and psychodynamic issues, whatever. So I'm trying to engage with this guy. And he was a bit of an arrogant person, yeah. He was like, I don't want to debate him, I want to have a boxing match with this guy, yeah. But anyway, alhamdulillah, apologies for the violent references all the time. It's because I do boxing, that's why. It's not because I'm violent. Well, you have to be violent to do boxing, but it's not illegal violence, if that makes sense, yeah? I'm not helping myself, am I? But that's good. Ali knows because he saw me and one of my close buddies, brother here, nearly punching the crap out of each other the other day in Toronto. It was training purposes, by the way. Yeah, you put it on the projector, yeah, he filmed it. Anyway, notwithstanding that. And he was very arrogant, so I was asking him questions, I was trying to connect with him. I think it was a couple of hours conversation. Then he came in with something really stupid, because I was getting him to an intellectual corner. He said, yeah, the reason I'm atheist is because the Quran says the world is flat. And I'm like, oh, bloody hell, what is he saying? And I was like, although it's not true, but I said, yeah, you're right. And by the way, this is what I remember from the story. I'm adding a bit of spice, so I'm just trying to collect. This was many years ago, yeah? And I was like, yeah, the world is bloody flat. You prove to me it's round. And he looks at me, you stupid person. The scientists, oh really? Mr. Empirical, you've been empirical all day, you've been physical proof all day. Where's your proof? I don't care what a scientist told me. You give me your physical proof that the world is round, yeah? And he was going through all of these arguments, left, right, and center. And I was like, give me evidence. If you take a plane, right, and you go straight, you're now in the same position. Have you done it? No. So if you go on the highest peak of mine, you can see the curvature. Have you done it? No. Even if you can see a slight curve, doesn't mean it's round. It could be a flower shape. It could be a semicircle. Where's your physical proof? He was changing colors. His ego was being battled. He was getting angry, frustrated, flabbergasted. He couldn't take it anymore, right? And then what does he end up saying? He says, I got it. He says, the shadows. And then I looked at him and I said to him, indeed, in the alternation of the night and day are signs for people who reflect. Quran. And his mouth hit the floor. And I said, you arrogant so-and-so. You were pointing the finger at the Quran, but 3 fingers were pointing back. And the only argument you can come up with is the argument in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Takbir! And this for me was an ayah from Allah. Allah gives you certain signs when you're doing things like, carry on, don't give up, keep on doing your stuff, kind of thing, yeah. And you have this revealed in your life. But alhamdulillah. And the opposite happens too. Allah gives you signs so you can take a step back sometimes and you need to work on yourself. And sometimes Allah humiliates you, which Allah could be your greatest teacher from that point of view. That He teaches you, be more humble so you could continue your work in an effective way. And that's why the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is not only about Yusuf alayhi salam. The story of Yusuf alayhi salam is also about his brothers. You remember in the story, Sheikh, do you want to come and deliver what you just said? Is going to be beneficial to everybody? Yeah.
I was just explaining what you just said.
Okay, good. Oh, they don't know English?
They do, but they missed the ayah that you mentioned.
Oh, subhanAllah, sorry.
Shadow.
Jazakallah, sorry.
So they missed it.
Jazakallah. So basically, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is not only about Yusuf, it's about his brothers. Because his brothers were the usbatun, prideful group that they thought they deserved their father's love and they were powerful, right? But what does Allah do to them in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam? Allah breaks their ego, humiliates them. They suffered a famine. They were split up. They're not that prideful group anymore. They were split up and had to go to different directions of the city, different entrances into the city. They were accused of stealing. And after this humiliation, the ego was dropped to the point where they now were ready to ask forgiveness. And Allah forgave them, and Yusuf alayhi salam forgave them. This teaches us that sometimes the humiliation in your life could be one of the most greatest things that ever happened to you, because it was a means to break your ego so you could come closer to Allah and ask for forgiveness. And that's why if you've been humiliated on the Day of Judgment, I'm telling you, you would probably wish for that to have happened a million times in your life. Because it was a means for your purification. And that's why I say to some du'at sometimes, if you haven't been humiliated, maybe that's a bad sign. Anyway. Sister, you happy with that answer? Good. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When it comes to being like an intellectual and developing, like you said, not being narrow, having a well-rounded academic like understanding. I mean, you said stuff like you question and you think about why things don't have to be there.
Yeah.
What are some other advice you would give to like make sure you're thinking?
How old are you? How old are you?
I will be 16 in January.
In January?
Yeah.
Inshallah. 16. That's very good.
Yeah.
I want to speak to you tomorrow. We need to connect. Because if you're like this at 15, then Allah knows what you'll be like when you're 25. And you need shaping and guidance. And maybe a good whipping as well, just to keep you humble. Yeah? But wallahi, because that, sometimes we think, by the way, it's not real whipping, man. Intellectual, spiritual whipping, yeah? Like, this whipping in the sunnah anyway, so get over it, I'm joking. So, Habibi, yeah, so it would be good to see how we could shape your future in the best way possible so you learn from our mistakes and stuff, because, you know, we need more brothers involved in engaging these areas, but they have to be connected to Allah. So my advice is about learning. See, all learning, all good knowledge comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? And all beneficial knowledge comes from Allah. And if you go on a path of knowledge and you're acquiring it not for the right reasons, to please Allah and for you to adore Him, then that will inevitably manifest itself in the future, yeah? So if you're not spiritually grounded and you know who Allah is, no matter what intellectual knowledge you have, it's going to be a source of your destruction anyway, yeah? And it will be a source of your own doubt. How many times in my own kind of perseverance and trying to learn things the hard way, because I've done loads of mistakes, all online for people to see. You know, we didn't have, you know, institutions and internet when I was becoming Muslim and trying to publicize some ideas. It was a very early stage of social media and stuff. So you had to learn things the hard way and trial and error and all of those things. So what I saw even in my life is that, you know, I would have some knowledge on something. Sometimes it would be a cause of a doubt. Sometimes it would be a cause of a conviction. I was like, why? But it's the same knowledge. And I realized that was the case because of what my spiritual state was. Like, I would talk to an apostate, give him a great answer, and they would come back to Islam. And yet, I wouldn't be convinced. Or I would even doubt the great answer. And I would think to myself, and I think, why was that happening to me? It's because I wasn't connected. There was no dhikr. There was no, you know, khushu' in salah. And there is a correlation between your spiritual state and your connection and how you see knowledge. Because you could have the same data in front of you. One person sees it this way, another person sees it another way. Why? Because sometimes it's the state of heart, right? That that inclines you towards one position over another. And our ulama were always like this. When they had issues of tafsir, they would put their head in sujood on the ground to ask Allah. And many of them would do tawbah and repentance and istighfar because they knew that was a barrier to learning and progression. Famous statement of Imam Shafi, may Allah have mercy on him. He accidentally glanced at the ankle of a woman and he forgot something from knowledge. So they knew there was a correlation between their actions, the spirituality, the connection, and how they became intellectuals. So from an Islamic point of view, that has to be in place. Secondly, my advice is to stick on one topic, but then read around things that you enjoy, you know? And that would help you a lot. And I've seen that. So when I had to write an essay once, and this was before I even started my postgraduate studies, I was researching a lot on the epistemology of testimony. I learned it on a relatively, high level, to the point where I could include it in my postgrad essays. Right? And that was self-reading. But the danger of being self-taught is that you end up doing a lot of mistakes. You may misunderstand something. So my view is sit with ulama, yeah. Sit with them. You have to, because becoming an autodidact, learning things yourself, is it could be destructive. Yeah, because remember, to be is to be related. You have to relate information with people, bounce ideas, understand if you really understand this properly. Is it useful knowledge? I'm understanding the context. Is this in line with the Islamic creed? Sometimes we may learn something we think is a great argument, and we end up realizing, hold on, this is quite bad, because it contradicts some creedal fundamentals. So you have to be connected to scholarship as well, which is very important. And there's no such thing as an intellectual on his own. They've learned, they've gone through things, they've studied, they have a mentor, right? Even in self-help, right? In secular spirituality and in development, they say, have a mentor. In our case, the mentor is our scholars. Yeah? So that would be my advice. Humility, spirituality, stick with scholarship, and the rest is easy. You just read around, man. And pick something that you enjoy, because I realize if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be very, very hard to... Like now, in some of our research seminars, we have to go through what do you call those papers? Things with an S. I forgot what it's called. But papers that were landmark papers, right? And they're like top-notch, current, state-of-the-art academia. And then we discuss them, and we analyze them, yeah? Some papers will take you hours to read, because when you read in academia or even philosophy, when you read one line, you stop, then you think about it for about 20 minutes. What did they mean by that one line? You can't read it like a book. So what's my point here? Yeah, so if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be very, very taxing on you. Very taxing. Like I had to read something on civility, if civility is a virtue. Yeah? Because many moral philosophers say that civility is not a virtue, but one was arguing actually is a virtue on the grounds that civility is not only saying that you would tolerate other people, but you would have a public expression of that tolerance, and you would publicly announce that you are willing to tolerate things that are foundationally intolerable. So that public manifestation of being agreeable to tolerate things that you don't tolerate, and to be able to discuss that itself, if I remember correctly, that is a moral virtue. Yeah, so there's a big philosophical discussion. Now, to be honest, that's absolutely boring for many people, yeah? But yeah, so I think pick something that you love as well, especially if it's like secular stuff. But the first 2 points is very important. Humility, connection with Allah, connection with scholars. Yeah. And learn your deen. Don't do it like my way. I did it banana way. It's only relatively late I learned the deen. In the beginning I was doing trial and error with the philosophical stuff. And then, you know what was really funny? Then I just realized, oh my God, we already had the answers. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. The Quran came back and just said, here you go, it was already in here. Well, why were you going elsewhere? Honestly, and that's what you see. So yeah, that would be my advice. Yes? Yeah.
Earlier in the day, someone asked about the flying horse, and you said that
What course?
the flying horse.
The flying horse, yeah.
Yes, and you said that if someone says that this is impossible, then he's an idiot. But we live in a universe that has laws, physical laws and natural laws. And even at the time of the Prophet, when this happened, people who believed the Prophet took a leap of faith. And this is what we're doing today as well.
No, they didn't take a leap of faith. I would disagree with that. They didn't take a leap of faith. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh said, if the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa said it, I believe it. That's not a leap of faith. Because the Prophet's testimony was a source of knowledge. And testimony is a source of knowledge for many people. And that's the point. It wasn't leap of faith in that way. And what I mean by when someone says it's impossible, not that it's unlikely. There's a difference between saying something is unlikely and something being impossible. What I meant, if someone says it's impossible, it means there is no reality, any conceptual reality that this could ever happen. And that is a silly thing to say, especially from an academic, yeah? Forget the layman or someone more simpler. Because of the mere fact that their own metaphysics or epistemology, or both, that you can only know things from experience, that has taught them that you may experience something in the future that you would have thought would have been impossible. Do you see? That's why I'm saying it's a very daft thing to say. And the main reason they say those things is a rhetorical ploy to try and undermine religion. Do you see?
Yes, but it's still, like, this is actually a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made an exception to these universal laws and made this as a gift to the Prophet or the prophets, like the sea.
Well, you could see it that way. I could see, but say for example, it was a real horse that came on real earth that picked up the Prophet ﷺ, and they had this metaphysical journey, but it was a real horse. Well, if someone argues that, that's still not impossible. Like for example, how many things have I seen in the animal kingdom, for example, I thought, no way. How many times has it happened to us? So many times. So why is it even logically impossible for a horse to have wings? How is that logically impossible? I don't get that. Like even now, I experience things, animals, I'm like, does that really exist? Is that an animal?
But because horses sense creation have no.
Sorry?
Because horses don't have wings.
Yeah, well, the horses that you've seen, that's for sure, yeah.
There was no any proof that there was horses.
Okay, could horses have fins?
Seahorse.
Well, there you go, seahorse. Why do you say that? Because you've seen one. Yeah. So all you could say is, if you're honest, I haven't seen it, so I suspend judgment. But you can't say it's logically impossible that there is a horse with wings.
It is not logically impossible for God to do it.
No, it's not. It's physically possible that you can have a horse with wings. They're putting ears on mice at the moment, and you're saying to me that horses can't have wings? They're putting an ear on a mouse. And you're saying to me that horses can't have wings? Think of it, look. It's about language. When we say something is impossible, we're saying it's highly unlikely. Right? When we say something is impossible, we're saying it can never happen. If you doubt that it's highly unlikely based on your current experiences, fair enough. But don't now form the conclusion it is impossible for a horse to have wings. Because that is an irrational position to take. Because that would mean you have seen the totality of natural phenomena. You've never experienced, we have only seen around 5% of the sea. Or there's about 80+% of the sea that we haven't explored. Allah knows what's there. There's probably an elephant with fins, honestly. And there are things that they're discovering all the time. Now, I'm not saying this is the theological position. I'm not saying, there's a whole species and there's a species of horses with wings. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to get you to think. Is it logically impossible for a horse to have wings? No. If you're an empiricist, the only thing you should say is, because I haven't seen it, I suspend my judgment. But my empirical knowledge has taught me that I can have future observations that are at odds with what I've observed thus far. That's the point. That is the point. So when someone says, could there be a possibility that there's a horse with wings? Of course. Okay, before they discovered the dinosaurs, you say to human beings, by the way, there's going to be a 100-foot animal with massive jaws, small hands, and it would rip other animals to shreds just using its neck and its teeth. And it's going to be called Tyrannosaurus Rex. They'll be like, oh, that's impossible. How can you have an animal that's 30 foot tall and it's got massive teeth? But then they discover the fossils, and then they say, yes, now it's possible, based on the discovery. So they should have some kind of humility and say, we can't say it's impossible. And that's why it's a dark thing to say, especially for an empiricist. For example, take 50 years ago, 100 years ago, if someone says, by the way, there's going to be something smaller than the atom, right? And we're going to observe particles that you could put one particle, you could connect them, and one particle is one side of the universe, another particle is another side of the universe. If you change the properties of this particle, instantaneously the other particle in the other side of the universe, its properties change as well. They'll be like, what are you talking about? That's impossible. 100 years on, that's a possibility. Do you see the point? That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah? And we have to be careful, and that's why, learning about this gives us a sense of humility, because a lot of these people, they're very arrogant. If they're humble, they say, look, I'm finding it unlikely based on the evidence I have at hand, fair enough, but don't say it's impossible. And that's the point. Don't say it's impossible, because it could be the case that such things exist or could exist. You just don't have the experience to justify it at the moment. But your history of your observations and the collective history of humanity's observations has taught us, be humble. We may experience things in 50 or 100 years' time that we felt was absolutely impossible. Take, for example, a plane. If someone said to you 500 years ago that we're going to be flying in a heavy, metallic, tin iron donkey, it's like an iron donkey with wings, right? They would laugh at you, they would stone you, they would cut your head off, they would whip you, right? But yet it's happening. So have some epistemic humility, right? So that's why when atheists challenge me, they say, why is it logical? Prove to me it's logically impossible. And they can't, because they're not philosophers. And if they use empirical stuff, then they say, well, you should be humble enough to say, there may be a possibility that there could be another species that we haven't experienced yet, because our collective experiences have taught us that we may see things in the future that denies our current understanding or our current data. And that's what I meant, okay?
So, there are two things, but actually I was the one who asked about the horse. And in my personal experience, until I read the Quran and studied the language of Quran, and had this incident and the incident of the splitting of the moon wasn't mentioned in the Quran, I would have a difficult time.
You would have it?
I would have a difficult time.
Yeah, but there's a difference between having a difficult time and saying it's logically impossible.
Right.
But yes, because I would have a difficult time. But because sources of knowledge also include testimony, and if the one who knows everything has testified that something happened, it follows something happened.
Right. So until I read the Quran and understood the language of Quran, and I figured out that it's impossible for this Quran to be something else than from Allah, then whatever is in the Quran is then I have to accept it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Had it been a tradition, had it been a hadith or something, I would have my judgments for it. I would say maybe it's happened, maybe it did not happen. So I think what I was trying to say is that a lot of times, I don't know if it's logical, I don't know if it's illogical, it can happen, it's not, it cannot happen. But my point was that once I read it in the Quran, I'm like, okay,
this is
no question.
But this is a different scenario. This is not a scenario of someone saying, I find it unlikely. That's agreeable to have that position, because the current collective experiences are showing that it's not likely, we haven't experienced it. But many atheists say it is impossible, with the meaning that it could never ever happen. That that is a false statement based on their own philosophy. They are being inconsistent. So our job is to expose those inconsistencies to show that there's something psychosocial going on because you don't want to believe, or there's some form of arrogance, or you just want to belittle. And when you do that, it facilitates discussion, because when you turn the tables that way, it opens new avenues. And you know what, he's right. Because it could be possible that we could have another experience that could even suggest that such things are possible. And we've learned that from our history of our collective observations, that there could be things in the future that we observed that we thought was currently unlikely. So we should be a little bit more humble about it, rather than saying, oh, look how stupid you are, it's impossible. Do you see? Because that was the narrative. You quoted Richard Dawkins saying, I'm not even going to speak to you or take you seriously because you have that position. He's not allowed to get away with that. He's not allowed because he's being fundamentally inconsistent even with his own worldview. That's the point. And that's why we need to learn to be able to do that, to expose us, because kufr will always contradict itself. Right? Rejecting the truth will always contradict itself. And if I was someone speaking to Richard Dawkins, I would have taken him to task on that. Say, hold on a second. You're being change your language. Say it's unlikely, but don't dismiss someone saying they're absolutely irrational, it's impossible, it could happen. Because as an empiricist, a scientist, your collective observations and our collective observations have taught us that there may be things in the future that can actually expose things to be likely that we once thought was unlikely. So calm yourself down and turn the arrogance knob down a bit, please. Yeah? Do you see my point?
I see it.
Yeah, but your point, I get your point. So we as Muslims, we believe it to be true, because the Quran is from Allah, Quran says something happened, and then it happened. We agree with that.
How do you get this kind of knowledge? Because, even Mehdi Hassan didn't give him the answer the way you give.
Yeah, but Mehdi Hassan is not a philosopher, he's a politician. Yeah, and he's not stupid. And plus, look, even if I was there, maybe I would have done a worse job than Mehdi. You know why? Because his presence of mind. You think someone's brain has no emotions? We have emotional filters. Maybe I would have got embarrassed. Maybe I would have got stuck. Maybe I would have forgot. Maybe my brain would have froze. We're human beings, bro. Maybe I don't think I could have done a better job than him, to be honest, because I'm a human being. I'm just here, I'm comfortable with you guys. I'm treating you like you're in my living room. You're my brothers and my sisters. And I'm engaging with you in a loving, nice way. Now, with Richard Dawkins, I don't think I'll be like that. And especially with the cameras from Al Jazeera, I'll be like, I'll be stuck. So, in a hypothetical world, could I do it? Yeah. But we don't live in a hypothetical world. There's emotions, there's context, there's agitation, there's there's all these things. So I think he did a great job. He could have done better, but everyone could do better. I actually helped him, I think. I sent him some references on Twitter. I don't remember, I think I did that. Just to help him out. So anyway, game over. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be very exciting. Please do your activities and your discussions. Tomorrow we're going through the philosophy of science, why Allah deserves worship, the Islamic response to the problem of evil and suffering, and we're going to go for an extensive Q&A to address other issues concerning atheism. May Allah bless you. Apologies if I've offended anyone, if I've done anything wrong. I'm trying to be my authentic self so we can engage positively. May Allah bless you.